Live. Hi, everybody. My name is Gila Glassberg. I'm a registered dietitian and a certified intuitive eating counselor. And I've already done a bunch of lives on the topic of intuitive eating. And there are 10 principles of intuitive eating. Just a quick refresher. These principles are designed to help you have a healthy relationship with food / heal your relationship with food. This is a non-diet, weight-neutral approach. And tonight's topic is challenge the food police. So I got in a few questions, and I like to read the questions first, and I feel like what I have to say about it usually answers the questions, but I will definitely try to more directly answer the questions as I continue to speak, and feel free to ask questions here. I see them, but I do get a little bit distracted, so if you ask a question and I don't see it, feel free to ask it again, just because I might want to finish my thought. Okay, so here are the questions. How to know which voice is the food police and which is healthy reasoning? Great question. What if a parent or sibling is your food police? And how do you define a food police? Okay, so let's define what a food police is. So actually, let's talk about the principle of challenging the food police. Okay, so this principle is basically based off of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is OKclarity, so we talk a lot about therapy here. And in a nutshell, what we're trying to understand is that our thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings create our behaviors. So if we're unhappy with our behaviors, we really want to examine our thoughts and get really clear with what our thoughts are and how they're making us feel and how they're in turn making us behave. So let's say here we're talking about nutrition and health and intuitive eating and mindfulness and having a healthy relationship with food, right? So what are some of the things that people might be struggling with here? They might be feeling out of control around food, and they might be binging, and they might be restricting, or they might have obsessive thinking about food, or a behavior might be that they are not going to any parties or simchas, or they don't want to be around anybody because they're so afraid of the way that they might eat, or they're afraid that people might see them eat, or they're afraid that people might see them restrict, or they're afraid somebody's going to comment on their weight, right? Those are behaviors that people might not be so happy with. So let's go back to the beginning of that cycle, which are our thought patterns, okay? So the food police are the voices in your head that are constantly feeding you dieting messages. So it could be just like a lot of negative self-talk about your body and your eating, like you're such a loser, why did you just eat that? Or like, oh my God, you're so fat, you look horrible, how could you even leave the house? And honestly, even as I say that, and I'm not talking to myself or anybody here, I have like a visceral reaction because it's so mean and it's so offensive and it's so personal and it's so attacking. I don't know. We're all just so mean to ourselves, especially when it comes to dieting. And for some reason, it's like a normal thing, right? So most of our beliefs and our thought patterns develop when we're young children. So it's like the way that our parents spoke to us. It's the way that our caregivers spoke to us. It's the way that our teachers spoke to us. And obviously, depending on many, many factors, many of us internalize those voices for better or for worse, right? So if, let's say, and I see this with a lot of my clients, let's say you're under 10, so let's say between 5 and 10, and a lot of the messaging that you got was like, cookies are going to kill you, right? So either cookies are going to make you fat and fat will kill you, or if you're fat, nobody will love you, or being fat is like the most horrible thing in the whole world, or a lot of messaging like, it's my fault if I'm fat, and if I really had enough willpower, I would be skinny, or I would be a size 2, or I could, if I really cared enough, then I would be XYZ, then I would be healthy, then I would be this size, right? So that is the food police, the collective negative voices in your head. So what those thoughts really are cognitive distortions. So they're really not based on reality. They're an exaggeration of the reality. So you could actually use this principle, challenging the food police, to help you challenge any of your negative thoughts. But here, obviously, we're speaking about food and body image. Specifically, like if you're working through the principles of intuitive eating, then you're going to use this to challenge the food police. But in general, you could really use this approach and these tools to help you challenge many of your beliefs, and obviously other tools. But this principle specifically could be used for many, many, many things. Okay, so if you want to think about your cognitive distortions, I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts. I'm wondering if any of you have heard of that concept, automatic negative thoughts. That is, I've known about them for a while, since I started learning about intuitive eating and other things. But for when I first learned about it, I thought it was really interesting. So our automatic negative thoughts are the thoughts that we don't pick. They're the thoughts that just pop up into our head. And we have so many thousands of thoughts throughout the day on a daily basis, right? You might not even realize, but if you think about it for a second, your brain is constantly thinking and calculating and judging and making judgments or thoughts, or creating different things in your head, right? So automatic negative thoughts are like what we would say cognitive distortions, and there's different types of automatic negative thoughts. Here are some examples. Catastrophizing. So everybody's catastrophizing is different, but like, let's say like, I sent my shirt to the cleaners and they ruined it, and now my life's over, right? That's like catastrophizing. Like, that's not really the biggest deal, although sometimes I'm sure maybe it does feel like the biggest deal, but I'm just giving an example. Maybe that is a really big deal, but I'm just saying for the sake of this live that maybe we're overreacting and making it into like a way bigger deal than it has to be. Or there's perfectionism, black and white thinking. So that's what dieting really is, if you think about it. Dieting says that if you eat this food, then you're bad. It says that you acted bad, that you are bad, and that you might as well like give up, right? A lot of negative exaggerations, like that's not really how the world works. That if we do one thing that we didn't want to do, then we might as well just like throw everything out. It's kind of like, I like this example that like, if one of your tires popped, would you just like pop the other three, or would you just like fix that one tire? So yeah, that's what dieting is. Like, if I eat this food, I'm good. If I eat this food, I'm bad. If I can't stick to a diet, something's wrong with me. A lot of internalized negative messaging, right? So catastrophizing, black and white thinking, or perfectionism, exceptionality, that's a big one. I'm the only one that struggles with my relationship with food. I'm the only one that's this way. I'm the only one struggling with this with my spouse or my children. And in a way, we like to feel like we're the only ones struggling with something, because a little bit we feel like entitled. Like, well, if I am the only one that has this family member in my life that treats me so poorly, then I have a right to like scream at her, right? I'm not talking about myself. I'm just saying that is how we kind of like use it to justify how we behave. And it does feel good in a way, like to think that we're the only one struggling with something. It gives us some sort of like justification that we deserve to feel that way and we deserve to act that way. Although it never really helps us, but I'm just saying that is one of the automatic negative thoughts. Fantasizing is an automatic negative thought. So like thinking that like, okay, I didn't eat the ice cream tonight and I am going to lose 20 pounds. Or same thing, like I'm going to go on this. Oh, this is a big one with dieting. I'm going to go on this diet. I mean, I definitely thought this when I was in my dieting days. I'm going to go on this diet and I'm going to work so hard and I'm going to lose so much weight and everybody's going to compliment me and I'm going to get a better job and I'm going to get a better boyfriend. I'm saying when I was a teenager, or more people are going to like me, more people are going to speak to me, my life's going to be better. That's called fantasizing. And if anybody here wants to share, so many people tell me this, that they really, really, truly thought that dieting would make their life better, losing weight would make their lives better. And some people do lose weight, whether it's through really strict dieting or weight loss surgery or Ozempic or whatever. And they feel really good, let's say for a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months or 3 months. But after that time passes and their life goes back to normal, they don't feel better. They realize that they don't want people to love them just because of the way that they look or their ability to lose weight. So that's, I mean, you could think about it in terms of anything fantasizing, like the person, Parla Abramowitz, who kind of taught this to me, was the example that she gives is like you're about to light the Shabbos candles and you think like everything's you're going to turn around and the table's going to be set and everybody's going to be sitting on the couch being like, hi, mommy, I love you, which like never ever happens. And then we get really upset when it doesn't happen, right? So those are examples of catastrophizing. So the way that there's many different ways that you could work with automatic negative thoughts or exaggerated thoughts, but the way that I like to teach it and the way that I find is like catchy and easy to remember is this concept of facing it, tracing it, and replacing it. So it's really the concept of reframing. if anyone's familiar with the concept of reframing. So number one, you want to face your thoughts with curiosity and not judgment. So not like, oh my God, here goes my brain again, just like feeding me these horrible thoughts, right? That already feels bad. Facing it sounds more like, okay, wow, I notice that I'm having this thought, this really strong thought in my head, that if I eat this piece of cake, I'm going to gain 20 pounds. And if I gain 20 pounds, my life is going to be over, right? So you're not really even attaching yourself to the thought. You're just like a neutral bystander watching the thought take place. So it takes practice to do that because we're so used to engaging with our thoughts and believing that our thoughts are who we are. And I heard this once, like, you don't have to believe everything you think, right? So think about how many things you think in a day. Imagine if you believed all those things. So you don't have to believe everything you think. So you're facing it, right? I notice I'm having this thought that if I eat this food, or if I go to this party, or if I do X, Y, Z, then I will ruin my whole entire life, right? If I eat carbs today, then I might as well just binge eat a whole pie of pizza. Like, I just might as well, right? That's facing it. You're not actually believing the thought necessarily. You're not really engaging with the thought. You're just like, wow, interesting. Imagine like if somebody neutral in your life would, like a coworker that you're not really friends with, would tell you something that was like, that sounded exaggerated, and you were just like a listening ear. So you wouldn't like really react necessarily. You would just be there and be like, wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so think of it more as much as you can to be neutral with your thought. That takes practice. It takes practice. Don't beat yourself up if you can't do it at first. Don't beat yourself up if you don't really understand what I'm saying. Feel free to ask me questions here or think about it. Or like if you're in therapy or you're working with a CBT therapist, or there's plenty of books out there that you could read about engaging specifically with your thoughts. Okay, so we're facing the thought. Now we're tracing the thought, okay? If anybody wants to try this with me, I'm going to give you an example of a client who did this and emailed it to me, and I shared it on my podcast, and I felt like it was super profound and powerful, and you could practice it right now. So tracing. So let me use one example to explain this thought. Okay, so you're facing the thought that I notice that if I go out with my friends and I actually have the full fat ice cream with the toppings that I like, I personally really like Reese's Pieces, I'm going to get so fat. I'm going to gain 10 pounds. And if I gain 10 pounds, I might as well just eat a pie of pizza and like, not get out of bed tomorrow because like my whole life is ruined. Like if I eat ice cream and I gain 10 pounds, my whole life is ruined. I hope you guys are getting that I'm being dramatic. Although I'm sure some of you might feel that way, and I know clients feel that way. Now I want to trace the thought. And this is not my experience at all, because I did not grow up with these voices. I grew up with other voices, but from other clients or what I've read or what I've seen. Where does this cognitive distortion come from? Where does this automatic negative thought come from? I really want to think about it for a second. Okay, I think that, and of course doing this work is going to help you unpack those critical voices in your head, and that's what we do like in the first session of rejecting diet mentalities, understanding your own diet mentality, and you could go back and watch those lives that I did on diet mentality. But tracing it would look like, okay, where does this come from? I know that when I was 5 years old, I was put on a diet. Or when I was 5 years old, my mother was on a really strict diet, and she would never buy ice cream. And she would always look in the mirror after she ate a bowl of ice cream and say how horribly fat she was. And as I got older, and I was 5, 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10, and in high school and a teenager, all my friends around me started talking about how horrible ice cream is. Or all my friends around me were like really, really skinny. And when we would go out for ice cream, they would be like, are you sure you want to eat that? Or they were really way skinnier than me, and they were not eating ice cream. So a lot of messaging around eating ice cream is going to kill you. It's going to make you fat. If you're fat, that's the worst thing ever, right? And then replacing it is hard. The replacing it part is hard, that you probably should not do when you're feeling triggered. But the replacing it would look something like, as long as you're working through the principles of intuitive eating and you have some intuitive eating knowledge, it would probably look something like, eating one item of food in one day is not going to make or break. It's not going to change your weight, or my weight does not define my worth. Or the more I restrict ice cream, the more out of control I'm going to feel with ice cream. there's so many ways that you could replace it. So I'm going to personally read you an example of a client who obviously with permission gave me permission to share, and I have this on my podcast from a few episodes ago before Pesach, and it's labeled Face It, Trace It, and Replace It. Okay, so this was not specifically about food, this was specifically about body image. Okay, so I'm reading it too. Okay, face it. I feel ugly and dirty when my body is uncovered and I get to see it. So this specific client was having a hard time looking at herself undressed in the mirror. Trace it. Society in general and growing up, my family have taught me that only very specific kinds of bodies are pretty and worthy of looking at, and mine doesn't fit that image. Replace it. My body is a vessel which holds everything else that is me. My true worth and love ability is in my mind, soul, and heart. Myself is shaped by my experiences, my love, my pain, my inner strength and struggles, my desires, and my potential. There is no specific way I need to appear to be accepted, loved, and interesting. Those, including hopefully myself, who truly love and accept me, don't change their feelings about me based on my body. In my past, there were people with unhealthy intentions, people who did not love me, who use my body to hurt and violate my self-worth. In the future, only someone who loves and accepts the internal me is allowed close to the sacred holder of me, which is my body. Someone who accepts me will love my body too. Just as Hashem created the internal me, so nuanced and specific to me, he created my body to look the specific way. I need to feed, respect, and care for my body, but it is not my role to manipulate or undo the way he created it. Okay, so this client is struggling more with like some trauma around her body, but still struggling with the way that her body looks. And she's also like an amazing, excellent writer, and she went really deep into the replace it. But that's, I hope that you get the point. You don't have to do that every single time, but the point is that you really want to, I want you to think about how you want to think, right? So right now you might be thinking, ice cream's going to kill me. But how would you, if I could wave a magic wand and get you to think anything regarding the ice cream without all the distorted thoughts and all the things that people have put in your head or society has put in your head, how would you want to think in that moment? Okay. So now I'm asking you to do something really hard. Face it, trace it, and replace it. So what I do with clients, how do you do it in a shorter way? What I do with clients is I have them come up with something called a coping card. So a coping card is however you want to make it, but we do it on index cards, and on one side of the index card, or even like a sticky note, I have sticky notes here, you would write, what I like to do is, I'm just checking the time, what I like to do is write down on one side of the card that this is my distorted thought, or this is my unhealthy thought, or this is the thought that I did not choose, right? My automatic negative thought. And be really specific, because this is what you're doing when you're not necessarily feeling like a major trigger from your thought. You know your thought pattern. You know what's going to happen when you see ice cream on the table. You know what's going to happen when you walk into the room and your mother says, "Oh, I haven't seen you in so long. Why did you pick that shirt?" Right? I could give you 100 of those triggering comments that we hear, right? So you're going to write on one side of the index card your disordered thought, right? And that might be, if I eat ice cream, then I'm the biggest loser in the whole world. I hope you don't think I'm exaggerating here, because that is what people will say to me, if anybody wants to share. And then on the other side of the index card, you're going to write, again, label it however resonates with you, but something like my healthy thought choice, my adult voice, the choice that the thought that I picked, right? And in this specific example, it could be anything like all foods can fit. The more I restrict ice cream, the more I'll binge on it. My weight does not define my worth. I'm focusing on what my body does for me as opposed to just the way that it looks. Of course, intuitive eating gets a bad reputation because people think it just means eat whatever you want and who cares about the way you look. That's of course not what it means. But it's one of the big goals of intuitive eating definitely is to take the focus off of just the way that your body looks. Because if you really think about it, like, your body does so many beautiful things for you all day, every single day. And at the end of the day, we're just berating our bodies. Whether it's about skinny or fat, or whether it's about anything to do with our bodies. Like, oh my God, I hate my hair, I hate my eyes, I hate my nose. And we hear this from little kids already that are, it's just so culturally normal to sit and body bash. And it's such a negative experience. all around. And really the only people benefiting are the beauty industry that's making a lot of money off of us hating ourselves. So, basically, in a nutshell, that's what challenging the food police, that's the principle. That is what the food police is. Okay, so how to know which voice is the food police and which is healthy reasoning. So now that you know what automatic negative thoughts are, cognitive distortions, you're gonna get really good at deciding if your thought is based in reality or if your thought is a cognitive distortion. Again, this takes practice, but when you're and you could run it by somebody who you trust, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a friend that understands what you're trying to do. They don't have to understand intuitive eating 100%, but somebody who you trust is like realistic and in touch with reality. Like, let's say you're like, okay, let me think about this for a second. I am going to the pizza store with my friends, and I for breakfast I had French toast and pancakes and an iced coffee with ice cream, which is delicious. And when I go to lunch with my friends for pizza, I'm actually really in the mood of something light, and I haven't had any vegetables today, and I really enjoy Greek salad. And if they're eating pizza and it smells really good, great, I'm gonna have a slice. I think you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but to me that sounds very logical, that sounds very down to earth, that sounds like you are being in touch with nutrition and also being in touch with your body and also being in touch with not restricting, versus I don't really want to go to the pizza store because I'm such a pig. And every time I walk into that store, all I want to do is eat pizza. And it is like, I'm so out of control. Again, so a lot of what I just said is internalizing that something's wrong with you and that you don't have self-control and that food is going to kill you, right? That's how we kind of live in 2023, that like, if you eat this bite of food, then you're going to live forever. And if you eat this food, like, it's going to kill you tomorrow, right? So those, I mean, I'm giving you two opposite extremes, but that's how you would start to understand like your healthy voice versus your food police voice. And again, this doesn't just have to do with food or body image. Like, you kind of know, you get used to understanding when your voice is like really fat, when your voice is like, your heart is racing and you're telling yourself 100 things a mile a minute and you're like, oh my God, I'm such a loser, what's wrong with me? That's the voice of anxiety versus like that calm, loving, supportive voice. So if none of you have ever, if you guys have not heard of this ever, and I'm telling you to do this now, you're not going to like go home and practice it today. But if you get used to practicing it and you make it a practice and you learn to slow down and just get curious about your thoughts, you try that face it, trace it, and replace it. You practice it. You have your coping cards when you're not in such a highly triggered place, and you have access to them, whether it's even on your phone, on your computer, in your wallet. You just know that when your brain starts to go there, then you could easily access, this is what my disordered thought is saying, and this is what my healthier thought choice is saying. And one other thing that I wanted to say on the topic of challenging the food police and reframing automatic negative thoughts, I'm actually going to quote Basia Pessin, who's a therapist, and I interviewed her on my podcast, and I've quoted her so many times that she talks about neuroplasticity, like changing the way that our brain thinks, like changing the thought patterns in our head, basically. Don't quote me on the scientific definition of this, but I'm just basically sharing what she said is like, think about it like if you walk to shul, right? There's like a 10-minute walk to shul from your house, right? But somebody discovers this grassy, really beautiful shortcut that like will take you 3 minutes, right? So it's like this big, beautiful open field of grass, right? And you're so excited, you start walking to shul. It takes you 3 minutes through this grassy path, and it's amazing, right? So every Shabbos you start walking this path. Then your neighbors and your friends and everybody around you starts to learn about this grassy path, hard to say, and you walk back and you walk forward and you walk back and forth and back and forth and back and forth hundreds of times, 200 times, 300 times, 1,000 times, 100,000 times. You will create a new path, right? And that's kind of how our brain works when it comes to neural pathways, right? So if, I know that sounds a bit like I don't want to say extreme, but like maybe like a little bit like out there, like I'm really going to change my thought patterns. But yes, like I want you to think about this for a second. I'm 32. Many of my clients are, like maybe they're in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And many of them have been dieting for 20, 30, 40 years, right? Either they put themselves on a diet when they were younger or their parents did. But once they started down the path of dieting and diet culture, their brain has literally told them, I would say millions of times, that you're fat, and if you're fat, you're bad. And if you're fat, it's your fault. And being fat is the worst thing. Imagine that being said to your brain thousands or millions of times over and over again, day by day. And I am asking you not to believe that thought. That's an impossible task. But if you want to work on not believing that thought, then you have to develop new neural pathways and new thought patterns. So how do we do that? We get really honest and open and curious about what our brain is constantly telling us. Okay, that's the face it. We understand where that comes from. And many, many times my clients will say, I know where that comes from. That comes from my mother or my father or my teacher or my caregiver. And then I'll ask them, what are some other things? I'm not bashing anyone's parents here. I'm just trying to get you to understand what your brain is telling you all day, every day. Then I asked them, okay, what are some other things that your parents have told you since you were 2 years old? Okay, well, they told me this, and they told me that, and they told me this, and they told me that, and many of them have great relationships with their parents. I'm not bashing anyone's parents here, but I'm saying, what are other things that your parents have told you that you no longer believe now as an adult, right? Because as adults, we're in charge of our belief system. As children, we're not in charge of our belief systems. We pick up the belief systems around us, and that's just what happens. And as adults, our job is to sift through the belief systems that we've absorbed and ask ourselves, do I like this belief system? Am I sticking with it? Or do I not like this belief system? And actively try to challenge it and replace it with something healthier, right? So I want you to really, this principle is a lot about like self-compassion and grace and gentleness and understanding why you are so mean to yourself and so strict with dieting and why it's become such a big part of your life. That's the facing it and tracing it and then replacing it. So this could be like a lifelong practice. This could be not just about your eating or your body image. This could and is, for me and for many clients, a practice that could help you work with the thoughts in your head, change the thoughts in your head, be kinder and gentler to yourself, and you utilize this tool to help you in many areas of your life. And here in this principle, challenging the food police, to understand your food police, to be like kind to it, to welcome it, to get curious about it, to understand where it comes from, and in your adult head and your adult voice, replace it with a healthier thought choice. So that is challenging the food police. And you could watch many more lives that I've done about intuitive eating on OKclarity's page right here. You can check out my podcast, Get Into It with Gila. I talk a lot about all these principles. I have a YouTube channel as well. And you could go to my website, gilaglassberg.com, and book a 20-minute free clarity call. And thank you guys so much for being here today, and have a great day. Bye.